Okay, so what I wanted to show you real quick, most people got this, some people didn't. So if you go to the class, which this is a class, and then you look down here. Wait. What? Did it not get put here? Okay. All right. Let me check something. Oh, it's the spring. What the heck? Why are they giving me the spring courses already? Okay. So now it's dynamics. Okay. And it's not there either. What? Okay, that's the wrong semester. Okay, what is going on here? This is right, right? So why are they listing them this way? God. Okay, this is fall 20. Okay. There we go. I don't know why they've done this, but anyway, so you'll see this new entry here. That I put that there a while back, and it's a whole series of videos, probably a good, maybe 20 to 30, maybe even 40 hours. And so, like, if you go down, I don't know. I didn't put a title on them. I should have. But this is from an older semester. And so I should delete that. That shouldn't be there. Yeah, delete that. So it's essentially like this is a lecture on, you can already see the compatibility, or the how these two are actually the same thing. If you look at some of them, that was 7, wasn't it? Maybe it wasn't. Okay, so there's this one. So there's a whole pile of lectures in here. So what I'm getting at is, if you go in here to near the end, so I'm just going to hit the last one because it's got to be impact. You may actually find, okay, so there's some, okay, so there was something that happened with that video. I don't know. And there's the, so you can see I worked the problem. This was a while back. So what you'll notice is it's the same concept. The energy that I started with, the energy that was gained or lost between 1 and 2, and then the energy in the final state. So it's the same problems or similar problems. And so I just go through here and work a pile of problems. Okay, there's the first appearance of an impact problem. So these will be on some of your homeworks and finals there. So let me go into that chapter. Okay, so that was that 11 or 10? I don't even remember. That was 11. So I've got a little bit to do here. We changed the name of this application, I think. But they left the icon the same, so I can always recognize those. Okay, so let me go ahead and grab that chapter. Okay. And I'm just going to do the PDF because the easiest way to grab it. Uh-oh, error. File system error. Uh-oh, that's not good. I might have to close and get rid of all the others. Or it might just be fine. I don't know. I guess it was just fine. I don't know what happened there. So this was basically impact. So I'll spin through it and then we'll go back and do some problems today, next time, whatever. So, I've said this before, and I had this discussion with someone the other day even, that actually this is the Newton's law right here. It's this one. But if you did this, this is what's generally taught to people. And that's correct if there's no change in mass with respect to time. Like, for example, if the rocket operates on the fact that it shoots mass out and back in, and sometimes it shoots enough mass that by the time the rocket made it up there, it's half its weight. Uh-oh. Okay, this is weird. I may have to shut down some of those other documents. So the mass can change. Okay, so let me do this. Let me get rid of this. Discard change. I'm going to get rid of a bunch of these things. Okay, that is this one. Discard changes. It could be that it's not happy about the size, number of files open. So now I only have one. So in effect, that's the law. So really, this, in my mind, this should look like this, okay? The sum of the forces integrated from T1 to T2 dt equals to d mv. If you wanted to have it so that you could eject mass out the rear end, then that would be mv at T1 and mv at T2. So it's just that simple. So in other words, you can integrate this. If you have a time dependent force, and then you put this in, and this is nothing more than mv at T2 minus mv mv evaluated at T1. That's a given no matter what happens there. So you're just integrating a force. And so you can have a time dependent force. Whereas before, we were a lot of the time we were saying the force is constant, therefore the acceleration is constant. We worked through from that perspective. So this is a little bit different. He has this, which is kind of what we were talking about. And then he defines this funny, weird term. And it's okay. It's just called the impulse. And basically, it's this integration term. And that's all it is. And so you notice he just integrates it, finds the area. Variable force, constant force, no biggie. Then he has this. And this is a pretty common thing. If you go golfing anytime, you're doing impact all the time. Then you'll notice, okay, so this is a vector equation, where these are the vectors. And if you look at it in component form, if you're in 3D, you got three of these equations. You have essentially the initial momentum, then you put a force on it and something happens. So for example, if a marble's moving this way and suddenly it changes directions, in order for it to do that, you've got to be putting a force this way to have it change directions and head off this way. So that's kind of why you might see something like that. Now, I've shown it to be such that it happens over a small time, but as you'll see not too long from now, you can have one marble hitting the other, and the path might look like that. So you can have a pretty large impact here that turns the marble, the ball, the pool ball, whatever. So it doesn't have to be occurring over a short period of time. Okay, so system of particles. Okay, system of particles. You got the cue ball, and you got like the 8 ball. There's okay, he's listing them as I, so I'll say I equal 1, I equal 2. That's all it is. Usually, in this situation, we generally don't have more than 2, but we could have more than 3. But it's very hard to work where you have one pool ball. You can have it where it hits 2 right at the same time, and they head off this way. You could have that, but it's more likely that you're just going to have 2. So that's what you get here. Now, what happens Okay, and I'll jump over this and go to the next section before I go back and work a problem. So it's just simply this. Put a force on this system. So if you had two balls moving, this force is external to the system, which is these two balls. So you have to reach in there and push one of them with your finger or something, or a pull cue or something. So, so keep that in mind, that this is external to ball number 1 and ball number 2, where the ball numbers are the eyes. If in fact nothing happens except one ball hits the other, there's no external forces here. And so you get this thing is equal to that thing. And he'll say that, I think, a little later. So he goes through and he does some problems. But before I stop and do problems, I want to just spin through here, since we're talking about pool balls. And then we'll go back and work a problem or two. Okay, so we go to the next section. And we'll go back and work all these. Okay, so now, okay, so say you had no external forces happening in between the impact here. So you could have something where this hammer maybe drops onto this, and that's an impact, but right before it hit it, it had a certain velocity which got stuck in one side, and this one had no velocity, and then you figured out the velocity right after impact. There's a situation where you got the tennis racket moving at a velocity and a mass, and then the tennis ball, and then it comes off, obviously going the other direction, at least you hope. But then there's another key here, okay, and it shows up, I think it shows up in the next section. There's two things that can happen, okay. One thing that can happen is something that happened in the picture right back here. In this picture, this is a standard physics ballistic problem. They call it a ballistic impact. So you shoot a bullet into a block. You know the mass of this block. You know the mass of the little bullet. So usually they write that with a capital M. And the mass gets, the bullet gets stuck in the block. It doesn't go all the way through. So what happens is when they get stuck in the middle, the final velocity of the bullet is equal to the final velocity of the block. And there's some definition here that we're going to use. Okay, so that's one case, the extreme case. The other case is two balls hit each other, and there's no energy loss through the impact. Now, how do you deal with both of those? It turns out you might have something partially in between, where this is the maximum energy loss and this is the minimum energy loss. You may have something in here. Example, you go take a basketball. If you drop it and it hits the ground and it doesn't even come back off, you've kind of set yourself into this mode. If in fact the basketball bounces exactly to the height that you released it from, then you lost no energy and you were in that mode. But if you drop the basketball and it doesn't come all the way back up to the top, somehow it lost some energy in the impact. So he's got a, and this is standard in this field. He's got a way of handling that. Oh my gosh. So he has this thing where two balls, essentially hit each other. They come at each other and they hit each other. And there's two things that happen. But he breaks it into multiple things. Okay, the first thing is they just about to hit each other and they start deforming a little bit. They reach their maximum deformation, kind of like that tennis ball you saw on the racket. And then they start restoring as much energy as they can, or the restoration impulse. And then you get the after impact. Well, here's the funny thing, is if this and this were equal, so to speak, then you would have lost no energy. But then what you do is you say, hey, wait a minute, my system, he'll approach it in a second like this. This is my system. And he says, okay, there's no external impact. The two balls are coming together, they hit, they bounce off each other. Then he says, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to make this be the system. If that's the system, then this force is what happens by, you're saying this is the system now. And you're saying that this force is being put on this through the deformation impulse. And he just so happens to use P there. But then what he says also is that the second part of this is a restoration integration. And so he's saying, okay, we can use these terms and this thought process to work out a coefficient here. And first thing he does, he does this, right? That's a standard. That's taking the system with two mass system, where you say, I'm looking at the system with two masses, the masses being A. Ooh, that's weird. What's going on there? Uh-oh. A and B. Now he says, I'm only going to look at A. And A actually has this impulse that's being pushed on it. And then A also has a restitution coefficient. But hey, wait a minute. Sorry. This sits up there. And this one, hang on, sits right there. So he comes up with this term, and he calls it the coefficient of restitution. Now, if you want to see how prevalent this is, hey, I already had that up. Okay. I wonder if it takes too much thing. Let's see. So if you look at, do you see it there? Oh, there it is. So essentially, it's just like that. Basketball hits the ground, it doesn't return to the same value. The relative velocity after the collision and relative velocity before. And it's just simply that much. Now, if there is no relative velocity after the impact, this upper term will be nothing or zero. If, in fact, you get back all of it, you're going to have that. Now, this is not, sometimes you'll read stuff online, and it's not exactly exact. There's some assumption. You'll see some stuff in here that talks about it's the ratio of kinetic energy, but that's not exactly true, but we'll just go with it for right now. It is a ratio of kinetic energy, and I'll show you that in a second. So then you turn around and do that same thing. Okay, so you did that for A, right? So here you got A. Then you do this same process. In other words, repeat this with B. He didn't write the equations, but you repeat it with B and you get this. Then you stare at that for a minute and you're like, hey, wait a minute. These two terms can be sucked out. I can basically move this to the other side and move this to the other side, work it out. So this is essentially the coefficient of the restitution. Now let me give you an example of of this. Let's say you and actually somebody I know was going to take sports officiating next semester, and I thought it was interesting. I looked at the course a little bit, and you're just supposed to learn all the rules for sport. Turns out in NCAA, if you read the manual, you're supposed to, as an umpire, you're supposed to take the basketball, go to the basketball court, and you're supposed to drop it, and it's supposed to return to a certain height. And if it doesn't return to that height, it has a bandwidth, so you're supposed to return somewhere in between here. If it doesn't return to that height, you're supposed to go air up the ball. If it returns too high, you're supposed to go take some air out. So there's a regulation about this. But let's just take a case in point where we have this. Yeah, I'll go over here. So let's say you go in, you take a basketball. I don't know, the mass is 2 kilograms. That's probably too much, but it's maybe a different kind of basketball. So you drop it from 10 feet. Say after it's 10 feet, it came back to 5 feet. So what's the coefficient of restitution? The mass didn't change. This is the mass of Earth. Now, it's true. Okay, so I'm going to call this E, and I'm going to call that B. Sorry. MB, ball, VB, and I'm almost hesitant to use the I for initial because he used the I for the index. So I'm going to call it 1 plus ME, Earth, velocity of the Earth, 1 is equal to, now there's no external force if I'm considering the system to be the ball and the Earth. Nothing's happening outside of those. There's no force during that impact on either one of those. I mean, they are forcing each other, but there's nobody else pushing them. So MB, VB final, or 2, plus ME, VE final, or 2. Now, what we're going to say is the Earth is sitting still, and the fact that the ball hit the Earth is so massive, it didn't move in the other direction. So we're going to make that assumption that the Earth is huge, that the mass of the Earth is massively huger, if that's even a term, to the mass of the ball. So therefore, this term actually becomes insignificant. Wait, yeah. So then you're stuck. Okay, how do you resolve this? And what you do is you have to get this E term. And the reason I do this problem first is because this gives you a set point. Okay, so if I look at it, it's V minus V, V minus V, but which one is it? It actually turns out to be the final over the initial. Now, okay, it is true the final in my case was 2, and the initial in my case was 1. And I'd rather use the I and the F, but I don't want to mix things up. So it turns out the way this works is you swap your indices, Earth, and then now I put the initial, and the final, and the final. Now, you can go under this assumption that, in fact, where's the Earth? The Earth didn't really do anything. And so then you end up with BB2, and you have a minus sign here. So you can put the minus sign anywhere you want. You can put it right here if you wanted to. So you take the initial velocity, you take the final velocity right here, and you divide the two. And how do you find that? Well, what you do is you're looking for it right before it strikes the ground or right before it comes out. So the energy equation tells you that 1/2, okay, so you released it from rest. So the total potential energy of that ball up in here is mgh, and it has no kinetic energy up here, nor does it have kinetic energy right here. And then what you do is you say you have all the kinetic energy here and here, and it's 1/2 mv squared. And so this is the equation that tells you if I got a certain height I drop a ball from at rest, that's going to be the velocity. So it turns out V is, okay, it's convenient that those drop out. 2 comes over, and the square root of 2g8. You'll see this equation over and over and over and over. It haunts you, but it's okay. So at this point, if you look at this thing, and I'm sorry, kind of, okay, here, let's get rid of this extra stuff here. If you look at this thing, and you say E is equal to, say, minus, and then that's the final, So I'm going to say this, square root of 2GH. And what will I do? I'll better call that the final one. And this one, the 2GH, the initial. Now, if the ball came down and hit the ground and just blah, it just died right there, then the height 2 would be 0, and this E would be 0 if the ball didn't come off the ground. Didn't return. Didn't return. Okay, and that's because V2 would be nothing. The ball velocity 2 would be nothing. It just would sit there on the earth. And you had that before. I'm sure you've gone out, played basketball when you're a kid, and you're boom, and it just hit and then you're like, oh, we got to get air in this thing. So then your deal is you could just cancel things out, and you could do it this way, H2 over H1, or either way you want to do it. So in this case, I got 5 over 10. So I don't know, 1 over square root of 2. Isn't that 0.707 or something like that? But let's say the ball was a super ball and it returned to the same height. If it returned to the same height, it would just be 10 over 10 or 1. So what you got is a range from 0 to 1. And that's what he talks about in this. When you get down here, I don't know where he starts. Okay, coefficient of restitution. There's your tennis ball bouncing. It gets down here. Okay, an elastic impact is when E is equal to 1. A plastic impact, essentially, the thing goes down and it just kind of flops on the ground or whatever. Or the energy, the impulse, restitution impulse is nothing. And so essentially what you'll find out if you go through, I think that's pretty much it. If you go to the end, then I'll go back and work some problems. We'll start. Let's see if we keep going. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, what's this? Angular momentum. Well, we might talk about that, but I didn't give any problems in that. So let's go back and I'm almost tempted to do the impact and roll it backwards, but I better go in the sequence that I should, you know. Okay. All right, this is getting old, so let's hit all the pages and see. I just want to get to a good, reasonable problem. How about, okay, that's funny because that picture is on one of the videos, so I must have been working something out of this. I don't know. Oh, and I think I worked that one online on those other videos. I think something like this is one of the problems I gave. So I don't want to do that exact one, but I can use the picture. Let me just use the picture. And I'll just make stuff up. How about that? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll go over here. I'm going to drop this thing in here. Now, initially, these problems that show up don't have anything to do with coefficient restitution. It isn't until I get to that section that we've got those. So in this, oh, I didn't get the picture. Okay. Okay. So here you go. I'm going to set it up, but I'll let you. So here's my picture. And there's my situation here. So the first thing I'll do, I'm just going to start making some stuff up. So it may not be the same. So I'll say the mass is equal to 2. I'm going to just say 2 kilograms. And I don't know what that, oh, that's newtons. Okay, so the force is in newtons. Well, F1, okay, so let's start with F2. F2 is pulled if I do a free body diagram, and I'll just do it in place if you're okay with that. And just do it like, okay, here's F1. I'm sorry, 2. So here's F1. Here's F1. Here's F1. And here's F1. And it is true, you've got a normal force and a weight. I don't think there was any friction, but I better check. Did you say there was any friction? That's for the speed if I attach this as okay, neglect friction, okay, in the mass, the pulleys and cords. Okay, so let's just say this thing is 2 kilograms. I just made that up. It's different on there. Let's say the initial velocity is equal to 1, because I know how to work with 1 meter per second. So this thing's moving at 1 meter per second, and we're going to say it's going to the right. So then he's obviously wanting to know, let's just figure out where it's at. It's information at 6 seconds. So what you got is is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 F1 and 1 F2. So what do? You just say sum of the forces equal to this, and you don't even have to do this part, but I do it anyway. And then I do this, I integrate sum of the forces. Now it's up to you. You can integrate them this way. You can put the integration of the sum symbol on the outside. Yeah. Well, yeah, it sort of does, but the tension in this rope, in the rope on this side at least, is F1 throughout. So it goes around here, and then of course it's pulling here too, and then it's pulling here. So, so does that make sense? So if you had a, just think of it like this: if you had something sitting dead still, and it wasn't moving, and say this is 20 pounds, and you have a rope up to, and this is a pulley, of course. So here's my pulley. Then if it's not moving, this is the simplest case, sum of the forces in the Y have to be equal to 0, which makes these two tensions, each of these tensions to be 10 to offset that. Does that make sense? So in this case, legally, if these pulleys had a mass, then there would be a difference in tension in each of these ropes, because, you know, in order to spin them, you're going to have a torque to spin them, and that inertia is going to slow that down, meaning each of those is going to be different. But in this case, he said all the pulleys, all the ropes have no mass, so the tension throughout that rope is F1. So then what happens is, and I don't think I just replaced that part, this funny drawing here, with just 4 F1s there, because I think I counted it right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And so you end up with this, and then you end up with, let's say T0, which I'm just going to go from 0 all the way to 6. So I'm not even going to put in that. I'm going to say 0 to 6 of dmv, which will be equal to this part right here. I can do mv at 6. Okay, so I should say it this way: t equals 6 minus mv at t equals 0. So if your thing is moving to the right at 1, you have to remember this is a vector equation. So the fact that it's moving to the right means it's a +1. And so that's a +1. What was the mass? 2. I had the mass of 2. I don't know what the velocity is at t equals 6, minus the mass of 2 times the velocity of 1. So I've got that on the right-hand side. Now I've got to integrate two forces. So what I do is F1, I integrate F1 from 0 to 6 plus, was it? No, I got a 4 right there. And then I got a minus integration of F2, 0 to 6. This is minus because it's going to the left. So I should have said this to begin with. I should have somewhere said that's positive. That's positive. The force to the right here, that's positive. That's negative. So I should have said that. Should have put that there. And then I got D2. So now all I got to do, believe it or not, is take a few minutes here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the area under that curve. And that one will go in the F2. So that'll go in the F2. Then if I want, okay, it took me a minute to see this. He goes out to here and then goes across to here. So there's the second area. And these are just numbers. So you could set up the equations and do that. Or if you're me, I'm just going to try to figure out the area in there. So to me, anytime you're given this, you know you're going to have to find that area. So the area under that curve is going to be, okay, from here to here and there to there. So 40 times 4, that takes care of all of that. And then there's a couple ways to do these parts that are linear. What I do is I find the halfway spot, and this area and this area are the same in the halfway spot, if that's a linear line. Okay, so you're starting at 10, you're going, so the halfway mark is right there, which is 25, right? 40 plus 10 over 2 is 25. So that means this spot is at 25. So it'd be 25 times that distance of 2. So that's the area under 2. And then if you wanted to, you come back and do the area under 1. Area under 1 would be, looks like I got broken. I have to have 3 things broken. Okay, so I've got this part, which is 10 times 2. And then I got this part, which is easy, 30 times 2. And now I got this. And so to me, I would go in here and say, that's the same thing as this. So I would say that is 20 times 2. So with all that, I've got the area under all of those, and that's essentially all you need. Except one of them has to be multiplied times 4. So what you have is 4 times, what do you think that is? That's 20. Okay, 20 plus 60 plus 40, that's 120. So that'd be 120, and minus the area 2, that's 160 plus 50. Isn't that like 210? Minus 210 is equal to 2. The velocity, I'm just going to stop using this subscript. It's the only velocity here. Minus 2. Let's see, this becomes 240 minus 210. That becomes 30, doesn't it? Divided by 2, wait. 30 minus 2 is that, wait, no, wait. I'll just say it this way. Okay. Okay, let me go to here. 30 is equal to 2v minus 2. Okay. Now, I add 2 to both sides. I got 32 is equal to 2v. And I get v is equal to 16. Is that right? I don't know if I did my math right. Did I not? Oh, it is. That's funny. Okay, 480. Okay, now what is 480 minus 210? 270. Okay, then I add two. Oh no, 272. Okay, what's half of 272? 136. Okay. Oh, after 20 years of doing this, you could find amusement in this kind of stuff. So that's actually one of the problems. I remember seeing that when I put it on there. So it's a pretty simple approach. Oh, I think we ran out of time. But what we'll do, wait, what is today? Today Friday? Okay. I think we're going to meet on Monday. But are we meeting on Wednesday too? Or we're not? Okay. Okay, so if something happens over the weekend and we're not meeting, I'll have a lecture that goes through the rest of this. But I don't know what's going on. Um, so is there Tuesday classes? Right. Oh, regular Monday, Tuesday. Okay. Then after the break. Okay. Okay, that's the other thing. I gave you the two assignments for homework. They're both due on that reading day at midnight. Because I just thought, why, if I'm not taking off any, I just put them the same day. And I will tell you this, like if there's like, don't quote me on this because I'm not sure, but I think this is the way it works. Inside, when you work a homework, let's say there were two problems on homework, and you work it, and you're like, crap, I didn't do well on that. I got like a 10 out of, I got like 0.1 out of 2 points. So I think if you go and restart it, you get a whole new set of problems. You get to do them both. You can make 100 on it. So there's a choice of restarting it or working inside that thing, and you work your way through it, and you go through several things. Do what now? No, that's supposed to be gone. Oh, really? Okay. Well, maybe so maybe next time, if maybe you and I can get together, I could see your individual to make sure, because I'm trying to make sure this thing is doing it right. So it'd be good for me to get with somebody who's attempting to play with it and poke at it to make sure the scoring is the right way. Because there's these weird settings on my end, and when I look at them, I'm interpreting what it is, but I don't have a student account. I wish they'd give me a faculty account and a student account. Then I could log in as the student and try stuff and then see what happens, but I don't have that. Oh, for the final? Yeah, I think so. Regular. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right. So it won't be okay. So after Thanksgiving is that weird 2 days. Then it'll be a week to the next Monday would be okay. And so I tried to make it do so on next Monday, the 21st, the final opens, so you can start in on it. If anybody, I mean, I guess if you want it early, just send me an email. I can just back it up a day. I don't care. I just thought I'd give you a little bit of a weekend. There would be the other. Yeah. It's straight. And in fact, I went ahead and said you got two tries. So If you went in and you just bombed
it.
it.
That works the same way as the homework, where it's two like full attempts, but each question has individual attempts.
Right. So the way it works, I think, okay, and you could try it and see. I think you just get one attempt to answer everything.
Yeah.
Then you get all done. You look at your score, and you're like, okay, I'll take that. But if you don't, you go back and redo it, and you're starting with a fresh set, and you go do it again.
Okay.
So that gives you. So the way it seemed like this thing worked is so far the homework gives you 6 individual pops inside the thing for a question. Then it exhausts itself. But outside of that, I think I gave it 5 retries. So it means that anybody that like, oh, I didn't get that, well, go do it again. Okay, so you just go do it again. You can just pop your score up. It's the same set of problems. There may be a number shifted a little bit, but once you know how to do it, you just go back in. It's just a matter of clock wall time, and that's all it is.
So it's not time.
No.
It's 2 attempts.
Yeah. So you just open it. You can poke around on it, think about it, work a problem, come back tomorrow, answer it, then work the next one, and just go through it. And then this part I don't know. I don't know if it tells you feedback after every problem or if it tells you feedback after you've done all the problems. That I don't know. So
probably, if it's like the homework, it should tell you after you get exhausted.
Oh, okay.
Because you can ask for an answer on the homework, and it will tell you this is the answer, and here's what you should have done.
Oh, okay.
Or it'll give you like another hint afterwards.
Oh, okay.
But after you're done with that attempt, like all of them, you can go back and view every one of your questions, but if you start another attempt, you can't go back to your previous
attempt. Interesting. So you better print it out or something before you go back.
Yeah.
Okay, that is interesting.
And
I would think you could go back, but yeah, that makes sense.
Hints shouldn't deduct. I don't think they do.
Okay.
Because I've used them before.
And they didn't take away?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah, it does have that -3 points or whatever every time that you don't get an answer right. Until eventually, even if you get it right on your 5th one, it's going to be worth basically no points.
Oh, okay. So it just knocks. It takes 3, 3, 3, and then boom. It's at the 5th time. It's just nothing.
Yeah, the 5th time it just gives you the answer and says you didn't get any points.
Oh, okay. So it kind of deducts you, and then boom. So it's like you're falling off the end of a bucket, so to speak. Okay. Well, let me know if it acts weird or something. I think it's been moderately reliable. There have been some people who have complained about it, but I think from what I can tell, they actually didn't even attempt some of them. And I'm like,